All right, let's get to the meat of this matter here every year. We'll start with quarterback as always, but I think that's been kind of beaten to death at this point, that Ben and Evan have both done a great job. They're both pretty even going into camp. Is there, well, not that you'll ever tell us,
no,
but is there a timeline that in your mind that we need to kind of get this sorted out?
Yeah. We talked about it as a staff last week, and I kind of pressed, to say, hey, we need to try to find within the first 2 weeks for sure of camp, by week 2 if possible, or sometime in that week 2, at which route we think we're going to go. Now, if we can't, we can't. And the reality is, even if we do, probably not going to tell you.
Well, no, of course not.
But probably won't be till that Thursday before the first game. But I just think for us,
Saturday at 3 o'clock.
For us and how we continue, and to give those guys an opportunity, leadership-wise, to maybe take some of those next steps. If we can, that's what we would like. So it'll be a lot of those situations that we try to see how those guys react and respond and give them the opportunity to be the guy. And then hopefully, within that week and a half, that a lot of things start to sort themselves out.
Where do you stand on if you have more than one quarterback, you don't have any?
No, I don't agree with that. We did it 4 years ago. We went into the UCLA game with going to play both guys, and we're going to roll after 2 series. And but I don't know that that's the best for us. I think we're a little bit further along. I do think that with those 2 guys, if they're the 2, I mean, you can't count out Brady and you can't count out Richesson, and some of those younger guys, they'll have opportunities too. But I do think that our offense is a little bit different based on who's running the helm, and we would be doing a disservice to any of those guys if you didn't know and then start to cater a little bit more to their strengths. So I think for us in the long run, it will be better if we can figure out some things.
Don't lie, Luther walked on campus and you said, "Looks like a linebacker to me."
Or tight end.
Tight end, yeah.
But
you move them to defense.
I know. But either way, I think no matter what it is, you like the opportunity that guys bring when they not just physicality, but not that you try to say quarterbacks play other positions, but only say that because of the uniqueness of him walking out as physically developed as he is.
Running back, crowded room, talented room. Ryan Montgomery's kind of the guy that's gotten the most touches so far, but you have Charles McClelland, who I thought showed some really good flashes in the spring. You've got a guy that I know your strength and conditioning staff loves, and Myles Montgomery.
I love him too.
Yeah, I know, but they're on our podcast all the time. So they've sung his praises very highly.
Yep.
And then you enter in Corey Kiner and Stephen Bird in the freshman class, and all of a sudden there's a lot of talent back there.
There's a lot of. I think in some ways everybody talks about the quarterback position. I think the tailback position for us offensively is maybe one of the biggest keys of the whole group. And just to see, we've been just so fortunate in what we've had there in 5 years. Whether it was Mike Warren or Jared Dokes or Jerome Ford. I mean, we just have had really, really, really good players, very consistent players that have done what they needed to do, holding on to the football and being dynamic
blocking
and making plays.
Yeah.
And going into this year, I said that development there and how that whole thing works out, I mean, is to me as big a deal offensively as any other position.
Is there a running back by committee going in? Are you looking to establish a number one? Like, what's the...
I think you need to. I think we need to. We've been so successful when we've had that. I'm not saying we for sure can, and it might take some time, but I just think that you've got to have somebody that you can count on, that you'd say, hey, is the bell cow, and that's what you're hoping.
A couple years ago, you reconfigured the wide receiver room, completely redid. Like, it was a home renovation on the wide receiver room. You have to be thrilled with how that has played out over the course of Mike Brown's tenure as your wide receivers coach.
I don't think there's any group that has come a longer way, and obviously Coach Brown's done a phenomenal job. And from where that group was, even just 3 years ago when he got here, but really from where it started, and then where it's grown to is phenomenal. I just mean the way they do everything, the way they block, the way they take care of each other, the way they work together. And it still is that way. And it's very talented. Obviously, you lose a guy like Alec Pierce, the second-round draft pick, but you really feel good about all the options that we've got there. And I can't tell you exactly, obviously losing Michael Young too, I can't tell you exactly who's going to be in what spots. I think that's a lot of things we got to figure out in fall camp as well. But I think there's a lot of options.
I mean, Tyler Scott and Trey Tucker have been, it seems like guys that have really stepped into that, being an upperclassman and what that means. But then Nick Mardner comes in. Jaden Thompson looks like he's had a really good offseason.
Really growing up.
Chris Scott is maybe
doing a great job.
Maybe the best hands of that group. Blue Smith had a big spring. Drew Donnelly.
Will Pauling. There's a lot of
Quincy
options.
Burrows. Don't want to leave him out.
Some young guys too, but I think it starts with obviously with Trey and Tyler and what they have done, even last year. Meaning not just catching the football, but taking some heat off of Alec Pierce to be a special teams guru, because they kind of took over some of that role. And those guys have been phenomenal, whether it's wideouts, return guys.
The best pair of gunners in the country.
And that's what I mean. Like we just talked about it this morning about the what it took off of Alec's plate.
Yeah.
Not that we didn't want him to be a gunner, but it took that off his plate, which made him probably a better player to concentrate, stay healthy in the things that he did this past year. And so they've done a phenomenal job. I think they will be the leaders, obviously, of that group, and will give any of those quarterbacks great options. Because they're guys that they can trust and count on. They've been in the system that know what they're doing. Not that you can't trust and count on the other guys, but those guys are still battling and learning. Nick Martyr, is still learning the system. He's only been here for 6 months. And Jaden Thompson's still coming into his own, and Chris Scott and a lot of those guys. So it's nice to have, that's what the Michael Young really did for us in solidifying some leadership in that room from a couple of years ago.
You can see some Michael Young in those two in the way that they carry themselves. They definitely absorbed a lot from him. Tight end, a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
Lenny and Josh are back, and
character fun.
They're both characters. That is cartoon characters, yes. Some might say at times. But Chamon had a great spring, and I think Peyton Singletary, it looked like, has started to grow up. Caleb Schmitz
creating some depth there. Obviously, the key to that whole room is the ability for Lenny and Josh to be able to play off each other and to do what they do really well, and to do what is going to help make them, future pros as well. Because the better they do those things, the better our offense is, the better our team is. And, where everybody wants to do it all, right? I mean, you want to catch balls, you want to show that you can block, because that's what they tell you. But I think we've got to make sure we find a way, because I think it'll make us all better. It'll keep us all healthier. It'll give us some better mixture when, we kind of get guys into where they fit best and how they need to be played. And then obviously there are auxiliary roles they've got to be able to accelerate at too. But you've got two dynamic guys with Lenny and Josh, and we've got to put them in those situations so that they can play the best of their ability.
You're a defensive coach. That's your experience.
Yeah.
How is it fun to look at running back, wide receiver, tight end, quarterback, and go, man, we've got some toys now.
And sometimes when you look at it as the defense perspective, you always look at the things that are difficult for you.
Yeah. And
sometimes I push those two tight ends and those three tight ends on just because knowing how much more difficult it is, to match up and to fit up all the different things that way. But they do give us a lot of options. Chamon is a young guy that's going to give us a lot of options as well. But that's where some of these critical times for fall camp for these young guys, and it's hard because they might not get a ton of reps, but they got to recognize that this is their opportunity to really develop who they're going to be.
Offensive line, you have 5 guys that started the Cotton Bowl coming back. Is it as simple as those 5 guys slot back into where they were, or with the new offensive line coach, is there maybe some things at camp that are going to be tinkered with?
There's definitely some differences, and it's great to have the core nucleus. When you've got your center back and Jake, and you've got your 2 tackles back, that just obviously are such good starting spots and places. And then trying to figure out, because sometimes, there's sometimes where D.O. could play it. So there's a lot of other options I think that they've developed some other guys, and I think through the weight room and a lot of those situations are going to give us an opportunity to play a little bit different. Then we've had some injuries, obviously with Mets being out a little bit and Coop's been in and out with some injuries as well. It's created I think to me a better competition than just to plug the same 5 in from last year. But I would say that's that's the strength of our team, and that's what we're going to start with.
So is it going to be prediction game 1? Tunstall, Cooper, Renfroe, Mets, O'Quinn?
I couldn't, honest to goodness, I could not tell you. There's a lot of things happen through camp, but I do think that Coach has done a great job at moving some guys around. They've moved John Williams in there at guard, and they've moved Dylan O'Quinn in there at guard and to play a little bit more, and they've moved guys from center around too.
Gavin's done a great job.
Done a great job, and sometimes it's a little harder. You're behind Jake, who's done a phenomenal job, and for him to have some opportunities to play at the guard and get a chance to be in there more, I think is something you'll see a lot of in camp.